Hello and welcome to another BuildASoil YouTube episode. Today we've got Season 7, Episode 4. And things are starting to go a little bit faster, so it's getting exciting. And I want to make sure that we document all the steps along the way because we're not going to veg for very long. And it's important I show you as things are going to start to happen really quickly. And that's my favorite because we get to the fun part really quickly, but I still want to show you. So come over here and you can see all of the seedlings that have germinated. Of course, we're not keeping all of these. What we're going to be doing is using the Farmer Freeman DNA kit, which this is probably the best. I talked about it last time. Farmer Freeman's, who he's used for a long time. Farmer Freeman has a website, EasyXY. We'll try and offer these at BuildASoil, but you can just go talk to him direct. This is a 10-pack. We've obviously got more than that. He hooked it up, so thank you so much, Farmer Freeman, for doing that. That episode's coming soon. We'll talk about it, and we're gonna show the process. But what I wanna do is make sure all the seedlings are good enough size to take enough plant material, which you can do it. It says, know the sex of your plant at just 7 days old. So we're basically ready. I've got a couple that are just a little bit small where I don't want to cut the plant material off yet. I want to give it a little bit more time to be slightly bigger. And since I want to test them all at the same time, I'm just going to wait a couple more days until we get the optimum window. That'll allow me to fill out. Basically, you cut a little piece of the leaf off and you put it in here and it has a sample number, and that will all correlate on a spreadsheet so I know what is what. And they also give you, I think, a sticker in here that matches the sample number so you can put them on, but we'll do a whole episode that day so we can talk about the organization and getting the spreadsheet results, all of that. Today, what I want to cover, I want to discuss the seedlings, which I'll go over in just a second. We're going to cull a few of the runts. We're going to talk about the seeds that didn't germinate and some that still are, and discuss what to do in that scenario because you might have questions as a newer grower. I want to mention the tray to grow. I fired it up for a few minutes on the weekend when I was gone. When I was here, just enough to fill the resi, and then I turned it off. And it's drank through that, and it worked for me, but I don't quite have the roots growing all the way through yet, so I'm not wanting to bottom water. And today, I'd like to give them their first little feed. And since we're gonna be supplementing the entire time here, I took this opportunity to update the BuildASoil supplemental feeding schedule for 2024. Don't look at here because this is the before, this is my notes. We're going to be updating this as a download that'll look a little bit more professional like our regular guide. And this will be the new guide with some of our new products and everything we're gonna do to supplementally feed throughout this round. Then in another episode, we're gonna be setting up all the 10 gallons using 3.0. We've decided to go with our regular 3.0 recipe here. And then over here, this is the Ultra Clean recipe, which I'm gonna set up today because we're gonna have to transplant soon. Here's the timeline as I see it. Couple more days, we're gonna do the DNA testing video. We'll send those off, we'll get those back in a week. So they're gonna be in here like another week, 10 days at the most, which is fine. They'll get a little bigger, but 10 days from now is when they start just getting huge really quick and I need to transplant. So I think we're gonna time it just right. I'll show you what the size is. We're gonna then transplant. And so that only gives me the next week or 10 days to get these beds ready. And I like to have it where it's like, you don't open the bag of soil, dump it in and plant your plant. You can totally do it. But if I have time, I like to let the soil acclimate temperature-wise. I like to get the watering just right. I like to set the bed up. And so part of the 2024 feed schedule, something that hasn't changed, is the initial setup. Initially, we put the soil in, and then we put the mulch layer on, which starts to train the feeder roots for the future. And it starts to give some of the biology in that mulch layer to break down. And then when I add the compost or the worms, it gives them some food to start to eat. So what I'm gonna do today is follow the craft blend, and I'm gonna use the Colorado Worm Company castings because they've got worms in them, and that'll kind of inoculate this new bed of Ultra Clean with all the life that I'm looking for. And then I'm gonna put the straw mulch on. We'll probably put the cover crop in, and then I'm gonna water it and we'll just call it a day. The bed's then now set up, ready for transplant when we're ready. Normally I would go with a decent top dressing, but this time I'm gonna keep it pretty light because we're not gonna veg for very long. We're basically gonna flip to flower within a week to 10 days after transplanting. So timeline wise, that means that in less than 3 weeks we'll be in flower. So it's all gonna happen really quick. We're gonna have everything full in here, and we're gonna eliminate lots of these through DNA testing really quickly. So instead of me reading this, we're gonna do a full episode. I'm just gonna do what needs to happen today. And so the first thing is I'm gonna talk about the seeds, show you the roots that are growing underneath, show you which ones I'm gonna pull and why, and have a discussion. Then we're gonna mix together the feed for the second week, which is on here. I'll show you what I'm gonna do. We're gonna water these, and then I'm gonna set up the 4x4 bed, and we're gonna wrap it up. So it won't be too long, but these are important steps. The last thing that I'm gonna do is go over the environmental protocol, at least where we're at, because I haven't done the full environmental episode for season 7. I wanna tell you what we've been keeping as numbers in here, because although it's 61% right now, that's with the tent door wide open. It's a little bit more comfortable for us to film in here. It's normally about 75% humidity in here, and we'll talk about what that means in future episodes. Let's show the seedlings. So come on over here. Here's one tray that didn't pop, okay? And so this one, these 3 have not popped yet. Out of this whole tray, 3 are the only ones that didn't pop. This one obviously did later. It's beautiful. It's perfectly healthy. I like it. But you can tell that all these other seedlings, even the runtiest, are pretty much ahead of that at this point. So I think I'm just gonna transplant this for a giveaway. And we'll find out naturally if that's male or female. And so that's gonna be pulled today. The other thing that I wanted to show you is, let's move that out of here. There's 4 more that didn't germinate. So a total of 7 that didn't germinate out of 85, 84. We're well above 90% on germination, which is what I expect. You know, if they're older seeds, maybe a little bit less, but if they're fresh, hey, 90% is a pretty good number. And that leaves us more than enough to get the half of females that we're hoping to get out of here. And as I've mentioned in the past, female ratio is typically a little bit more female than male. So out of 10, you might get 6 females instead of 5 or 4. And so we'll see. We'll go over all the numbers with you. We may have some to give away. We may not need all of these, but I certainly don't want to have too little to start the runoff, because then we have empty spots, and that can lead to a canopy that's not as easy to fill. The whole idea with the sea green is to fill that canopy immediately with tops instead of slowly fill it with side branches. And I think you're gonna like what you see when we do this. Now, here's what I'm looking for. I kind of reach and start grabbing them. Let's just grab a bigger one right here. So not quite yet. That one's about to probably have some roots pop through. This one, I think I see the tip, but I want to show you one where you can kind of see it. Yeah, so here's one where about that size. So when the second set of leaves are starting to get big, I normally start to see roots coming out the bottom. And those roots coming out the bottom is what I'm hoping for, because then I can start to turn on the bottom watering and they'll be drinking. Or at least it tells me, hey, there's enough roots in here where they got to the bottom, and I can start to make sure that I increase the watering, because in the beginning, if you overwater seedlings, it can be a problem. So I try not to water too much and make sure the weight of the cup doesn't change. Once the seed gets a little bigger, it'll drink all that water in there pretty quickly. And then I need to make sure I'm on a regular routine. But for the first, so for instance, today is, since seeds run on Monday and today's a Wednesday, it's been 9 days since we put a dry seed in the cocoa coin. And then what we did is on the 5th day, on Friday, so Monday we put them in the cocoa coin, on Friday we transplanted into here. I let them go over the weekend, and now it's Tuesday. And so a week and a few days, what I'm trying to get at is I transplanted on Friday, I watered once through the bottom, just barely, and now we're about to water for the second time, barely, with some food in it just to get some response, which means that you're not watering that much in the very beginning. And then once you see the roots pop out and they start to abundantly come out, now you can kind of be more aggressive, because the plant's gonna drink the water. It's not gonna sit in stagnant amounts of water. And that's part of the watering protocol. When you're bottom watering, even just in the bottom of a tray, you don't wanna do it until you see some roots coming out the bottom, because you're just gonna drown them. They're not gonna have even a chance. And so if I just randomly grab some of the ones that are slightly bigger, that one doesn't have a root yet. Let's see. That one does not have a root yet. One up front. That one doesn't. So it's gonna take me more effort to find one that has roots than doesn't. So I'm not gonna bottom water yet. And going on weight, everything's pretty nice. I could probably do without watering. So today when I mix up a feeding, I'm just gonna barely put a little dose of feed in there, just to see if I can boost their root zone with some of the probiotics, and see if I can get them a little bit of like an extra speed, I guess, a little bit of health. And so part of why I do that is you have such a variety of seeds. Before I go to transplant, I really want the roots to be really doing as well as possible. I want to speed up the growth. And I know I can do that, because normally I'd be like, wow, I'm gonna have to hold these back in here for weeks at a time. I don't want to feed them. I just want to slowly grow. But I'm trying to get them used to very small amounts of what we're going to be doing, and then kind of build that up as we transplant, so they can take everything I throw at them and they just run, because that's what we're going to ask of them. Looking here, a few things that I want to point out. While some are bigger and some are smaller, they're all fairly uniform. However, Here's one of the top dog that is just, it's not dropped its hull yet, and it looks like it's low vigor. And one of the things I want to discourage you from doing is getting in here and like performing surgery on your seeds. You usually just kill them. And so if you're gonna let this go, let it go. But what happens is this one will be multitudes of sizes different, because these ones are hitting the ground running. They're gonna be full-size plants when this is barely at this stage. So to me, that's too uneven, and I have enough plant numbers where if I wanna watch that grow or give it away, I can do it. But to have this uniformity and then deal with this, with the sea of green, uniformity is more important, especially we're already dealing with the variety of seed that can stretch in different sizes. I don't wanna deal with runts. And so some people, you find out that people hear certain runts became like sought after genetics. So a lot of guys when they're new, they're like, oh, I'm gonna keep the runt. This could be this genetic deformity that turns out to be the next cookies or something. In my experience, that's not the case. If you're a good breeder, you know what to look for, or maybe you run some of these things because you have extra space, totally fine. Maybe you find a happy accident, but for me, I'm just gonna put this one to the side. That'll free up more space to make sure that these are evenly spaced in here so the bottom watering is good. I kind of crammed a few extra in here, so a couple of the cups are kind of floating on each other. So this will allow me to open up that space because 36 of these fit in here perfectly, but 37 or 38 kind of crowds it. I'll set this one to the side. So this one dropped its seed right away, but it hasn't grown. And so you can see inside here, the first two leaves are just so small, it's barely able to photosynthesize. It's trying to live off its cotyledon. And in my experience, these do come through. But it takes a really long time. So I'm gonna set that one to the side. Okay, and then let's see, here's another runt right here. Interestingly enough, all those with the TDS, the Top Dog Sour, in it. That doesn't always mean something, but you know, whatever, those are the runts we're seeing so far. I think that's all now. I guess that's the 3. That's all of the runts that we had. I'm just looking through real quickly. There's a couple that are a little bit smaller, but I wouldn't say they're runty. They're keeping up. They were just slightly slower. And usually what I see happen is you'll notice all the seed holes have dropped. Sometimes the runtier one just had the seed hole attached for like a day or two longer, and then it was slightly behind on photosynthesizing, and you can tell what that looks like. But right now, everything in here is good enough. This one's a little bit small, but it looks like it's got pretty good vigor, so I'm just gonna let it run. And then I'll let, like since that one's so small, in a couple of days, those leaves will be big enough where I can take the genetic testing. And worst case, if it doesn't make the cut, it doesn't make the cut, but at least I'm making it somewhat more uniform. And so now what I wanna do is make some space in here so they all sit flat, and then arrange these. So they're all labeled. I don't have to keep them in any particular order. So I'm gonna go ahead and just move things around a little bit. And if you look, what I do is I normally just stagger them just slightly, and the cups fit in here really well. Okay, that all looks pretty good. Now let's see what we're here. 3, 6, 9. Then I can stagger them all. It's crazy the amount of runts we had. It's almost exactly like it knew I wanted 36 and 36 for these trays. Okay, now they're all in flat contact. I've pulled the runts out. Ooh, I have one more. Let's see. 3, 6, 7, 8. Perfect. So it was meant to be. So I've got good contact. I've got everything even. I've got the few runts that I'll leave in the cup. I'm going to go ahead and up pot this one, which you can see barely has a root coming out right now, so it'll be fine to up pot. And then all of these will just be given away. So I'll do that when we're done. Next, as I mentioned, what I want to do, we're not ready to bottom water yet. I'll show you that when it's time. You can see it's empty in here right now. And when it's time, we'll watch that fill up and I'll show you how it all works. It's pretty cool. But what I want to do is go ahead and fill up what we're going to add to the watering for all of these seedlings. We'll get that done right now. And then I'm going to set up this 4x4 bed. So I've got my water. It's just clean filtered water from a big boy. And then I've got about 3 gallons in here. And so if I look at the chart, there's a number of things you could add on the first one, because this is a feed schedule for all of veg. I go really light on the first one, so I'll either use less or I won't use everything that's listed on here. And so in the beginning it mentions Build-A-Veg, which I love, and then some Big 6. So that's really the feed and the micronutrients. That kind of covers the bases. Then after that, we have a wetting agent and the microbe complete. So you have the mycorrhizae and everything that's going to get in touch with those first roots that are coming out. And then the enzyme elixir to speed that process up. We have the aloe vera powder, which helps chelate anything you add to it and is kind of a plant tonic, good for seedlings. We also have the freeze-dried coconut water. We have the Thrive Holy Cow, which is their newest ferment that has a lot of phosphorus in it. It's really good for seedlings and for flowering. but it's about 4 times concentrate of the normal Yahweh. So use a very small amount, which I'd like to do today to see if we can't give them some of that increased phosphorus for the rooting along with all of the biology that's in there. And then on here, fermented plant extract, the comfrey or the hemp would be for the veg period. But what I don't want to do is add tons of ferments and all this different stuff to these seedlings. So I'll do an FPE next time. I'll do a tiny bit of Thrive Holy Cow. On here, it's a 1/2 ounce or down to like a 1/4 ounce. I'm probably gonna do like a 1/4 ounce per gallon. So you'll see a little tiny bit goes a long way, and you can use these products for a really long time. That's part of the fun of doing the supplementing. Little tiny bits, and you add it to it, and you see explosive response from your plants. So today, I'm gonna do a little Build-A-Veg, a little Big 6, a little Root-Wise, and a tiny bit of Holy Cow, and that's it. And I'm gonna do very small amounts. So let's mix that in here right now. Let's start off with the Build-A-Veg. You can see I've got all these products lined out. This will be for when I go over the entire feeding schedule and I just want to discuss the products. I'll probably put them on a table. We'll go over when to use them and why, because I never want to teach you something that you blindly follow. I want you to understand the recipe so you know if you're in another country what to exchange with all these in a DIY fashion. And if you do have all these products, I want you to know how to be most responsible with them so you're not being wasteful and get the best results from your plants. And so let me grab the few things I'm using today. So you can see, like, this is an herbal wetting agent. We're not going to use this one this time. This is just for foliar spray, but we are going to grab a wetting agent. So I'm going to grab the Kuyaha 20 this time. You can use Thermex 70, soap nuts. We'll go over that. In fact, I got a bag of soap nut back here. And then the only thing that I'm probably going to add today, since it's a brand new bed and there's no fungus gnats, is a little bit of WDG 3000, which is a fungus gnat killer. And I'm going to do the best thing, which is preventative. I'm going to add it here, and then we're never going to have a gnat in this grow room, which is great. And since I'm adding it to here, it's gonna be in all the seedlings, which means we just won't have any issues. I'm gonna use the preventative dose, which is a really small amount, and I'll talk to you about that volume. But basically, I've got the products that I wanted, and then the Build-A-Veg. Let me grab it right now. Here's the Thermex 70 yucca I was talking about. So you can use a Kuyaha, a yucca, anything that adds that saponin, helps spread the moisture around. We just like using it. So let's go ahead, and I've got, might as well, got some enzyme elixir. I didn't leave myself a lot of room, but it's okay. I'm just gonna set all this stuff down. So first I will add the wetting agent. And if you look on here, Kuyaha is like 1/8 of a teaspoon per gallon when we're doing a small amount like this. And so I've got 3 gallons, which means I'm gonna get 3/8 of a teaspoon. I mean, come on, doesn't have to be that precise. So I'm just gonna put a very, very small amount that's less than a teaspoon in there. So this whole bag will go a very long way when you're using it at very small rates like that, and it still is gonna do its job. Okay, Big 6. This one's a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon. We got 3 gallons, so I can do just a little less than a teaspoon. And these are seedlings, so I'm gonna go even less than that. Build-A-Veg, 1 teaspoon per gallon. These are seedlings, so I'm gonna do a 1/2 teaspoon, which means another 1.5 teaspoons in here. Okay, there we go. Nice thing with organics is everything's really forgiving, and less is more, especially when at this rate, they don't really need much. We're just kind of loading that soil with a small amount of soluble nutrients so that the plants that really want to start drinking can do it, but we're not going to overdo anything in solution. All right, so I've got the Holy Cow. I'm going to go ahead and shake that up. And instead of me putting that in the shot glass, well, I do have a liquid one. Let's do that. So I'm gonna do a 1/4 teaspoon per gallon instead of a 1/2. And so that means that I'm gonna do just less than 1 teaspoon for the whole 3 gallons. Okay, just under a teaspoon. So that milky color, that means I shook it up properly and everything's how it should be. You wanna shake it when you get started. And there's little tiny bits in there. Those are actually coagulations of some of the calcium and phosphorus and the biological community starting to develop. So it's pretty cool. I'll set that down. Cap it. The ferments have a little bit of an odor. This one is not super strong out of the bottle, but if you really give it a whiff, it's definitely got some funk. So just be aware. And I'm gonna do the WDG 3000. And so the preventative dose is 1.5 grams per gallon, or just about a teaspoon. And the eradication dose is like a tablespoon. So I'm going to go closer to the teaspoon side. I just need there's no gnats in there. So I just wanna get this in the top of the soil to act as a preventative, but I'm not gonna go crazy with it. Okay, so that's about the 3 teaspoons that I was talking about to be at that preventative rate as an inoculation. So now I've added everything except for the enzymes. I'll add that one to the liquid. Now these are 3 to 5 milliliters per gallon And so if I look in here, I'm seeing 3 mils in the very beginning. And so let's go there. Okay, done. This one you can keep in your fridge. You don't really have to, but if you leave it on the shelf for a long time, it can develop like a SCOBY-like kombucha in there. Don't worry about it. If it gets in your goop, it's fine. Otherwise, I just kind of water around it, let it stay in there. Kind of like apple cider vinegar as well. Okay, so for 3 gallons of water, I'm not adding much, but this is the concoction. And it's fun having these really high quality products to be able to make these things instead of just grabbing like a part A, part B. I think that's part of the fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix the liquids in, mix the powders in. And so you can grab a stir stick if you want. Since I've got some headspace in here, I'm gonna go ahead and just do a really good shake on it. Okay, now I can water this in right now and it'd be fine, but what I'm gonna do is let this kind of come alive a little bit and activate, and then I'm gonna give it another shake since I've got the bed to set up, and then we'll just come water these seedlings and the bed at the same time. So I'll set this to the side. We'll get that in a minute, and let's talk about what to do on the bed. So I'm gonna come over here. I've got my straw log. You can see it's got oysters already growing out of it. It doesn't need to be growing, it's just that these have been sterilized. And so it's wet, clean straw, which I really like. We also offer just organic straw that we get from a farmer that sprays nothing on it. It's all certified organic, and we get monster bales of it, and it's super clean. So do whatever you want. When I use the organic straw, a lot of times I'll put it in a tub and I'll moisten it anyways. That way when I open the, bring it in the room, it's not straw dust everywhere. So that might be a good tip for you. That's gonna go on last. I've got cover crop today. Did I not add the root wise in? Oh my goodness. I'm looking at the root wise going, that was the first thing I added, right? No. So, good thing I checked. Let's get that in the water. And so on root wise, you'll see me add this all the time. When I'm doing like an initial inoculation, you can use as much as like a tablespoon for like a full chapin of water, or a tablespoon for a 4 or 5 gallon bucket. Otherwise, normally what you do is go off the volume of soil that you have. Since it's not much soil that I'm inoculating and I'm really just trying to get in the root zone, I'm gonna go ahead and do the small amount, like half a teaspoon per gallon or something. Let's see what I wrote on here. Micro complete, yeah, half teaspoon. So I'll use 1.5 teaspoons. There we go, 1.5 teaspoons. This is what I was letting to come alive in here, so glad I caught myself. Look at all the foam from the yucca already. It's pretty cool. I'll go ahead and put that straight in. Oh, sorry, from the Kuyaha. It's amazing what you learn just growing this way. Okay, much, much better. All right, so that's in the watering can, that's fine. I wanna put the cover crop down. This is what the new Craft Blend bag is gonna look like. I just wanted to show you. I'm gonna use a little bit of the Craft Blend today. And then I really do like to use the gnarly barley. And so I'll probably set up the mulch layer, just get it super active with a tiny bit of gnarly barley today. It's like the trifecta. And then that's it. I'm gonna just keep it super basic. We've already got all the stuff in the watering. And so the last thing, anytime I use an amendment, I like to add like Build-A-Flower or the Colorado Worm Company castings. So what I did is I got a bag, because this is how they're sold. This is a smaller bag, and we guarantee the life. I mean, there's gonna be some worms in here. It's all moist and active. And what we found is that it takes 52 bags of the generic worm castings on the market to equal just the phosphorus and like 1 bag of Cocoa. And what's so neat about that is when it's in there, you know that there's been lots of the biology that creates phosphorus to accomplish that. So there's lots of phosphatase that's active, lots of the phosphorus biology. Of course, we've got root wise, but anytime I can get premium compost with the amendments, that's part of the BuildASoil way. And during that video where we did testing on this, I made a tub of Cocoa and I put it in here so that I could show the life in it, and then I didn't want to like kill all the worms that are in here because they started to come out and populate, almost like making a worm bin, literally from just a bag of Cocoa. And so at night, they're like running up the sides, lots of worms just from 1 bag. So I'm gonna use this to inoculate, and sometimes from compost you can get a gnat or 2, so that's part of why I've got the WDG 3000, just to make sure we're covered from the very beginning. But these worms are gonna go to town. Wow, there's like 10 already. They're all over. Now that I've had like the worm bin, they're coming alive, so that is really cool. We'll see what happens when I top dress. But I'm gonna use this tub so it doesn't go to waste and I don't kill the worms, to top dress this with, and I might save some to do the 10 gallons as well. So I'll just put this to the side, and then you're just gonna watch me right now do what I said I was gonna do and get the bed done. So let me get started. I'm not transplanting right now. So I don't need to be perfect with it. This one is just a test one, so I don't want to rip the bag. I swear we're getting these pretty soon. So normally what I do is I have like some sort of directions for how much volume to put on here. But as I mentioned, whole bunch of plants, but they're gonna flip to flower really quickly. So I don't need to add too much extra. I'm more just building the mulch layer. So I'm gonna go ahead and just sprinkle. There's a half cup. Okay, and one more half cup. So I'm just putting 1 cup across the whole thing. Not a lot, just enough to kind of build the mulch layer. When I go over the feeding chart in detail, I'll talk to you about how to use that feeding chart, whether you're gonna have a long veg or a short veg, little ways to adapt it. So there's the craft blend. Let me go ahead and open this gnarly barley. I'm gonna do the same amount. And these are full of enzymes and helps really start all of the soil life. And those few worms that are in there, they're gonna go in and start to just eat that underneath the mulch layer and start to make food up here. It's really gonna be cool. That's it, that was pretty easy. Probably gonna use this in a minute. Set that to the side. Cover crop. So before I put the cover crop down, what I like to do is take this so it's not just caked on here. I like to work it in a little bit, but since I'm adding the castings, I'm gonna add the castings, then I'll work it in, because right here it's kind of like open to the air, but as soon as you get it broken up to the soil moisture like that, it now can do its job and it won't make like a hard cake layer on here. You want the water to go in, and you want all of the soil surface to be in contact so the biology can work it. You don't want it exposed to the air up here. So let's get some worm castings in. Now, the volume here we can talk about, but I'm just gonna add some. And the idea is to add like a 1/2 inch layer all the way across. In a big bed, I don't have to be so aggressive because that's a decent amount of castings, and this is fresh soil that's full of food, but I'm gonna go ahead and get started. In fact, I'm gonna do the whole thing, that's great. Look at all the worms. This is just from 1 bag. And so if you were to get this elsewhere, you'd have to spend, you know, lots of money just to buy the worms to get your population started. Plus I can see all the predator mites that came out. The reason why I dumped it in a tub is if you just open a bag of cocoa and look at the top, the life isn't foolish. It's gonna bury itself down. And when I dumped this out and kept it in the dark and fed it a little bit, all the life started to come out. And now they're immediately gonna run from the light and start to bury themselves. But I'm just gonna spread it out. Make it nice and even. You can tell it's not even a 1/2 inch layer, so I'm definitely not doing too much in here. But it'll be nice and even all the way across. I made a little bit of room so I could actually put a foot all the way around the bed and get this like perfect, but it's a big bed. It does not need to be perfect. I'm just getting it spread out in here. And now those amendments, they're all in contact with the worm castings. But since it's evenly spread, I'm just gonna go ahead and tilt up the top layer a little bit to work those amendments in so I don't have like a cakey layer on top. See that powder that kind of popped up? That'll make sure that it's integrated here. Every once in a while, you'll see a little chip like that. That's from the Karanja cake as it goes through the extruder. And it's really natural, it just breaks up like that. But that's what some of that texture is from the craft blend. Well, that looks really good. I just wanted to get the bed set up. It's pretty much ready. This has been sitting here for a little while, so it should be plenty wet. Let's get it open. Now, if I wanted to grow oysters on this, I could just cut a hole in it and it would shoot oyster mushrooms out. But for today, I'm just trying to get this in here because it's an old one that I've been sitting around the shop for a while, and I just wanted to get it used. You can see all that mycelium in there. All that is made out of chitin. And a lot of you have heard about adding crustacean meal or adding insect frass for the chitin. It's not that high in the frass. It's actually in the insect. It's actually high in crustacean, but this is really cool because the fungus is made of chitin. And then the rest, you know, the cellulose is the #1. Chitin is next. And, you know, you don't need to buy the frass for the chitin. This has chitin, crustacean meal, a lot more affordable ways. I love frass for other reasons though, so. I'm just breaking it up so it's fluffier. I don't want to suffocate all the soil. I want it to breathe through here, but I want it to cover the mulch layer. The nice thing is, I haven't put the cover crop in. I'm gonna kind of wiggle that through last. And it's not like I have plants in here, so this is super easy to spread out right now. It doesn't need to be perfect. It's okay if it's dirty. It's all gonna start breaking down and turning into soil. The cover crop's gonna grow out of here, and it's gonna be young, green, tender cover crop. And all this brown here from the mulch will be the carbons, and the cover crop will be kind of the young nitrogen, so to speak, and it'll all break down together, making soil right in the top layer here. The worms are gonna work it. The mushroom biology, the chitin, all that stuff is building blocks for what we want to create in here. And just like you learn in science, nothing ever goes away. It just turns into something else, like a vapor, right? Or a gas or whatever happens. And so it's just kind of like alchemy, and we're putting all the building blocks in here so we can have it build what we want. All right, now you get the idea. I just wanted to show you the process. Lastly, I'm gonna do some cover crop. The idea, I'll have the amount on there. You can see what the seed looks like. The idea is to just evenly spread it out in here. I'll have a volume, but realistically, we can get a small amount of cover crop in here and it'll all overflow this. But we're not gonna have much time to grow this because we're transplanting pretty soon. So it's almost like a living fertilizer that's gonna sprout and then die in here. And we'll just be kind of keeping it young, and we're not gonna let it go wild. So I'm just gonna take little handfuls like this and evenly distribute it around. Let's see how many I do. That's like 1/8 of a cup. Doesn't have to be perfect. You're supposed to just kind of have fun and throw seeds. Right, whatever doesn't germinate just becomes food for the soil. It's all good. Now, if I just leave it on top, most of these won't germinate. Maybe because the humidity is really good in here, it might. I'm putting a little extra this time because we're not gonna have much hang time, and I just really wanna get some good seed popping in here. To me, it turns the soil alive when there's actually roots growing in it, when the plants are eating the light, putting exudates in the soil, working with that root-wise biology in there. That's what I want to have happen. So instead of leaving it on the top, I'm gonna go through one last time and just make sure that the seed kind of drops down to the soil level. I could have put it down first, but I was talking. And either way, I have to put cover crop down a lot of times through the mulch layer, so it's pretty normal. The Ultra Clean has a lot of Montana Grow and lots of Malibu compost, so it's a really expensive recipe for us. And because of all that Montana Grow, which is great for heavy metal uptake, but it does dry a little bit faster, which is awesome. But if I leave it exposed on top, it'll kind of dry out. So this mulch is really gonna help it. That's it. Lastly, I promised that we're gonna go over and do the watering. I have the microbe complete in and all of this has been sitting here, so I'm gonna shake it up. And then I kind of wanna seal this actual cover crop in there with water. And so I'm gonna go over the whole bed like this. You can see with the chapin how easy it is just to wand it all the way. Go back and forth, make sure it's even. And if you know our 5 to 10% rule, and you know that in here is over 100 gallons, I could easily put like 10 gallons of water in here, probably without overdoing it right now. But I'm not going to. I'm just gonna put the rest of this chapin in here. But I'm not gonna do it right now. I just wanna show you how it works. I'm gonna water these first. Whatever's left over, I'm gonna put in the bed. And I won't make you watch me do that. It's pretty basic. So as far as how I do this, I just like to go in order, and I'll show you how much I'm giving them as far as time. This is the 1 gallon per minute nozzle. It's pumped, good pressure, and this is about how fast I'll go. Go around, barely any's getting in there, just enough for food. Okay, I'll just do all these on camera real quick, and then we'll wrap up this episode. One of the things I also do, which we're gonna have a foliar schedule, just because people are always asking about it, but when I'm doing this at the end, you can always do a little foliar spray. But I wanna make sure I'm focused on getting the soil right now, so that's what I'm doing. Okay, there's one. Just gonna give it a shake again so it doesn't settle. Man, it's humid in here. I'm starting to sweat a little bit. Plants are loving it though. Now by doing just a little bit, I'm avoiding any overwatering. I'm gonna let them show me by having their roots come out the bottom that they're ready for more. I'm also using throttle control up here, so right here, I'm not just blasting it as hard as I can, I'm barely squeezing, so it's kind of a lower flow. Okay, now that I'm done with that, I'm gonna go ahead and step back. Just give it a little bit of foliar spray. Okay, these are all safe to foliar spray in the light. As far as the environment goes, I'm gonna put the rest of that can on. I did threaten to mention the environment, so I'm gonna go over that real quick before we wrap it up. If you download this, we're in the vegetative week 2, 18 hours of light on, 6 hours of light off. PPFD, we wanna be between 300 and 600. We're obviously not in late veg, so I wanna be closer to the low PPFD of 300. And we're about 350 right here at this distance with the light dimmed down just a little bit. So if you're watching and you're wondering, we're at 350 and we're at 18 hours, which puts my DLI around 30 right now. okay? I'm sorry, 20. And we'll talk about that later when we cover this so you know what DLI is. But for right now, I'm just going over it with you. Temps and humidity, we've been around 85 degrees and humidity's been about 75 to 80. So about 0.8 to 1. I'm okay as long as the humidity's high. I've got to come in and out of here, and so I'm keeping it around 75%. I might adjust it to 80, but this thing has been really keeping up, and so that's been really nice. That's the environment. I watered the seedlings. All I'm gonna do to wrap it up today is empty the rest of this can on that bed, and then when we come back, it's probably gonna be 2 days, just enough time for a little size in here. I'm gonna grab all these Farmer Freeman packs. We're gonna go through every single one and cut a little piece off and very carefully make sure it's in every envelope, and then we're gonna send them to the lab. Then we're gonna get the spreadsheet. While we're waiting for that, we're gonna set up all the 10 gallons similarly using 3.0 recipe. We'll talk a little bit more about the environment and a few things. Then I'll get super excited when we get the results. We'll go ahead and pull all the males and separate them, and then we're gonna decide. Do I transplant that minute, the next day? What's the size look like? How quick did it all happen? And then we're gonna set up the bed, set up the 10 gallons, and while we're setting that up, I get to set up the blue mat, the soaker tape. I also get to set up all of the blue mat carrots, and I get to set up the Oyas, and I get to set up the Eco-Wits. And so like all this has to happen while those are off to the lab for testing. So I promise more content's coming, lots of time to ask questions, and we'll do FAQs. So if you've got questions about anything that we covered today, drop them in the video. We'll be going through and doing FAQ videos as per usual. Otherwise, like always, thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, tell your friends about this. We're age restricted, so without the subscribe, we don't go as far. It really helps. And until next time, I'll see you on the next BuildASoil video.